Over the weekend, was looking through some information concerning this alleged special session in Texas about a representative who happens to be someone I had not heard of before, but was referenced in an article, and I looked it up on his website. I looked something up on his website, his actual literal website, and I looked in the back end code. And at the bottom of the back end code on his webpage, it said, "Enjoy the ride." It doesn't say that anywhere in his actual webpage. It only says it in the back end code. It's the last line on the code. It's the kind of thing where it's like, well, I mean, you don't see it on the webpage. Would that mean something? Yeah, I contend it does. Especially because I contend that he also has references in the back end coding on his page that refer to metrics associated with bills he's proposed this year, including bills that are up for review during this special session. And one of the unfortunate things is it has a sort of process of identifying and confirming what I suspected, which was that here in Dallas, when they had those young men identified as being between the ages of 15 and 17 at the convention center downtown, that there was a series of days where they were just sitting there on the buses. They sat on the buses for days. Why? Well, because they were clearing. They were using each of those buses as some form of clearinghouse. Were people placing hedges on those young men? I mean, I know what it's like. They've been doing it to me the whole time I've been here. They did it to people when we were in so called mental health observation. They did it to us when we were in domestic violence shelters. Nobody seemed to think it was a problem. Even when they reported that there were 3 mental health facilities for children that had to be shut down because there was sexual abuse between children happening in these mental health centers. Nobody talks about this. They have a bill up right now, presumably on the so called special session, discussing electronic information associated with education. And teachers are supposed to post their schedules publicly. I contend that they're doing this because they're going to give venture capital opportunities to coordinate schedules with their bidding on contracts, including potentially in association with some sort of awards process. It's completely inappropriate, right? But nobody really seems to care. Nobody's really gotten this. So far as I understand, there's this thing here. I found this from 2005. There is a section in here specifically about trusts. Now, the thing is, this was only for a specific period of time. But after talking about certain certifications and licensing regarding real property, it also discussed matters related to real property and trust associated with property, including a recovery trust, real estate recovery trust account, payments in the trust account management trust accounts, claim for payment from trust account, court order for payment, certain practices prohibited, grounds for suspension or revocation of licenses. Why is this important? Because it also talks about what you have to do if you're going to alter a lease or terms associated with habitancy under a real estate trust. Now, today's the 11th. Tomorrow's the 12th. Presumably, I was sent 2 official certified documents in the mail. One was certified, saying that by tomorrow I have to vacate the premises here. They've done nothing actually legal. The implication is if you don't vacate by August 12th, then we're going to do what? Engage in eviction proceeding. There's no just cause for engaging in eviction proceeding. But this is, again, another situation where I'm being extorted into cooperating with some other aspect of the kickback scheme that they've set up and they've tried to broker on me. And I've passed my 2-year term and I haven't paid. Nobody actually says what the payment is. And nobody puts anything in writing. It's just constantly in the background. Well, you haven't paid. I'm not supposed to pay. That was the whole deal when I moved in. I put that in writing. I sent it. It was confirmed that it was received. I'm not supposed to pay. That wasn't the terms. Well, I mean, I'm under threat of vacation. I have to vacate by tomorrow, right? It doesn't matter that that is connected to two really, really major, huge acts of securities fraud, and that the attorney that presumably sent one of the notices, because the name of the law firm's on the envelope, refused to respond when I contacted him by phone, said that I needed him to confirm the correspondence. He just refused. He received the email. He just refused to respond. And this is what they do, right? I bring this up because of the Youth Trust for a Drug-Free America. It was passed in the 80s. I was eligible. I was one of those youth that was considered to be a part of the Youth Trust for a Drug-Free America. Have you ever read about it? The understanding is it was supposed to support things like the DARE program. I contend that when they put that trust together, certain people identified, young people, that they had maybe thought showed some promise, and they began borrowing on the youth trust in association with us, events in our lives, things we were doing, maybe our father's duty station. The problem is they never stopped and they never paid it back. And now what they want to do is they want to solidify their flip scheme, where they want to demonstrate that we've acceded, and somehow they're refactoring of covering up for the exploitation they engaged at that time, including in connection with deals they hooked up with actual narco cartels for their own personal benefit, and the manners in which they brokered these drug deals for their political advantage were somehow justified as part of the will of the people, including people like me at the age I am now, who would have been those cute little kids that would have been availed of the benefits of the Youth Trust for a Drug-Free America. And you want us to talk about what right now? How are we seeing these young people? We've been strategically importing young people. Don't make any pretenses here. We've been strategically importing young people in connection with the kind of policy we have and the way we treat our relationships with other countries, especially our demand for narcotics, our huge, insatiable demand for our narcotics that is so unrelenting that we will pretty much sabotage any other policy decision we could possibly make if it does not tear to the priority of normalization, legitimization, and eventually legalization, and hopefully high profit margins associated with legalizing the narcotics trade. And if you don't comply, you do not get out of the loan they took out on you when you were a trustee for the Youth Trust for a Drug-Free America, when you were a member of and a beneficiary of the trust. They just haven't. I think at some point in time they decided maybe they would take some people and try to cash it out by transferring us early onto Social Security, which is also a federal trust, right? With Social Security, disability insurance, and the Youth Trust for a Drug-Free America were completely different things. The whole point was, you're sick, and because you're sick, you need medication, and including pain medication, and we'll give you pain medication. And because you have stress, we'll even give you medicinal marijuana because we're very progressive. And then you're going to understand you have no political reality except to advocate in your self-interest, which we've strategically manufactured to be about legalization of marijuana. You're not allowed to have any other political identity unless you decide you're going to become a trans advocate or you're going to become a disabled rights advocate. And then you got to understand social justice, racial justice, international politics, all those other things you used to think you had a political identity around. Well, you still do, which is why you got to legalize marijuana. Because if you legalize marijuana, recidivism, well, does that mean you forget that you've actually been to those other countries and you see what it does, and you see that the young people from those other countries do not have the same appetites that you are constantly bombarding young people in this country to cultivate. They're not as hungry in the same way. They're not as voracious in the same manner. Well, at least not yet, right? And so we're at this situation, again, we're at this impasse because I'm not going to relent. You have absolutely nothing close to a just cause to try to threaten me with losing my indoor living arrangement under any circumstances. But again, we're at this very crucial moment. The only reason I got inside is because I was a good girl and I kept quiet and I did my tacit approval of what was being done for people that were dealing with the scourge of drug addiction while they were on the streets. Well, now I'm inside. And so there's a little bit more of an expectation. I already found the bond, right? And I said no. And then I found the deal that was part of what you brokered the bond on, which I said no to really, really big because of that whole May 11th problem, right? And now we're where we are, which is 3 months later from that particular May 11th problem, right? I'm sorry. I am not going to be able to support you. None of the young people I ever taught or knew were narcos, were advocates for legalized marijuana, were drug addicted, were at risk youth. None of them were those things. I saw them as future leaders. The problem is the people that are the leaders now and the people who are allowed to say they're the leaders now need for us to be addicted to drugs in order to justify their position. That's what I see. And they're such amazing leaders that they will literally allow for them to continue to threaten to put me on the street until I agree to be the target demographic they've choreographed for me to be, which is either a drug addict or a recovering drug addict. And it's incredibly racially appropriate. Now, we could have a different paradigm. I was looking through some things that I got with the COVID relief that I considered income for my LLC. And do you know anything about the Panhandle pipeline? Do you know anything about the pipeline? The original pipeline. The original diversification effort. I didn't know until last night. Not, well, in that detail. I had other reference points, right? And see, if you really want to get at what it is you keep alluding to, stop downgrading your own people. We don't have enough lowest common denominators for the masses you're trying to manufacture. You need to have a more pluralistic understanding of who you could otherwise be working with. We're not your wards, right? So I would appreciate it if somebody today would act like an actual adult. You've only let me talk to one person over the age of retirement who wants to get treated like they're a teenager. The problem is I never knew any teenagers that acted like that, right? I am not going to let you cash out the trust that you borrowed on from when I was a little kid and punish me because I didn't end up doing drugs like you programmed for me to be doing right now so you could justify continuing to lean on it. That's exactly how I see this. You want me to be cut off so that then you can transfer it to a senior's trust. And the only reprieve you want me to believe I have is if I agree again to sign up for another round of having my life used for legalization and legitimization of narcotics and narco-terror cartelization, including in manners that have infiltrated the government and have dispossessed us of any other possibility for our life than to tear toward understanding legalizing drugs is somehow a civil right. It's not. There were all kinds of other things we needed to be doing right now. And we've had 2 years where none of that's gotten done because you've been trying to apply this pressure to get me to agree. Are you going to insist on seeing me homeless and on the street by this time tomorrow, merely because I refuse to support you in your drive toward legalizing marijuana? See, everything else I understand. Everything else tears toward the fact somebody a long time ago put a big, big, big deal down on getting legal, free marijuana through charity. I said no. I'm going to continue to say no. I'm never going to say yes. What are you going to do today? I want to know, what are you going to do today?